when you believed you had achieved perfection? Have you ever felt the crushing blow of failure? The year was 1964. Long shadows stretched across the exhibition hall as the sun set over Hong Kong. The most renowned masters from Asia stood before me, men who could see right through my act of pretending to be an expert in my field, not because of fear, but from an overwhelming want to let it all out. My heart pounded against my chest. I'd honed these techniques for what felt like an eternity. We calculated all of the angles. Every strike was quantified. The ways I used were flawless. And that, my buddy, was exactly the issue. As I started my presentation, time seemed to slow. Precise, powerful, and faultless execution of the first several moves was just as planned. However, with each step, a tremendous emptiness rang through my spirit. I saw it mirrored in the master's eyes. They were not seeing the actual art of battle. They were viewing a wonderfully built cage, a jail of perfection. Something odd occurred at that horrible moment, when my supposedly great technique sounded hollow throughout the auditorium. A reality hit me with the strength of a lightning bolt, destroying all I thought I understood about mastery. What I uncovered at that time of crisis, which I now refer to as the broken rhythm, revolutionized not just my martial arts, but also my whole view of how to master any talent, art, or goal in life. This secret I'm going to impart to you is not simply another strategy or method. Number, what you're going to discover will rock the basis of your approach to mastery. It represents the distinction between being a good practitioner and being absolutely unstoppable. The reality is, my buddy, that most individuals will spend the rest of their lives imprisoned in the same cage I was in that day. But you are going to find how to break free. The difference between movement and mastery. Let me tell you something most instructors would never tell you. Reality I learned after years of blood, sweat, and countless hours of serious contemplation. Most individuals feel that mastery needs flawless repetition. They spend years repeating the same actions, patterns, and reading the same books. They become technically adept, but their deeds lack life power in reality. I learned this lesson in the most hardest manner conceivable early in my teaching career in Oakland. I had a pupil who was technically adept and stronger than others. He could duplicate every maneuver I taught him with great accuracy. One day, I asked him to spar with a less experienced trainee. Despite his immaculate performance, he was vanquished. Why? Because he had learnt the gestures, but not the meaning. He had the action, but not the emotion. This, my friend, is what I call the gap between movement and mastery. True mastery is not about doing activities with mechanical perfection. It is about expressing oneself truly via your chosen trade. When I punch, it is not merely my fist that hits. It is my complete existence, emotional content, and soul that spills through the action. Consider this. Have you ever watched a musician play every note flawlessly but fail to strike your soul? Or maybe a painter who can reproduce reality with immaculate technique, but their work feels empty. This is the same phenomenon. They've nailed the form but ignored the essence. Most people hesitate to face the truth. Technical greatness is nothing more than a beautiful cage if it lacks what I refer to as emotional substance. This emotional content, this deep, honest, real expression of your actual self is what transforms simple movement to profound mastery. You may be saying, but Bruce, what exactly is this emotional content? Now you're asking the correct question. And now is where the actual trip starts. Neural bridge method. There is a reality about the human mind that I unearthed after years of inquiry and experimentation of fact, that contemporary science is just now starting to grasp, but that the ancient masters recognized instinctively. When you do a movement, any movement, you are not only training your muscles, you are also developing what I refer to as a neural bridge. Consider this. Each time you repeat an action, you add another stone to the bridge. Most folks imagine that only adding more stones or repetitions will result in mastery. But here is when things go awry. I recall spending several hours watching various creatures fight the cobra's strike, the mantis's accuracy, and the tiger's power. Each is gorgeous in its own way. What struck me, however, was not their skills, but how they learned them. They never just repeated moves. Their education was always related to survival, emotion, and ultimate purpose. This observation motivated me to build what you may name the neural bridge strategy. The trouble with standard practice isn't the exercise itself, but rather the mismatch between physical movement and emotional connection. When you practice without a goal or emotional involvement, you are constructing a bridge to nowhere. Allow me to describe what occurs in most people's journeys. They begin with excitement, move swiftly, and then plateau. They strike what looks to be an unseen wall. Do you recognize this feeling? The more they practice, the slower they progress. Why? They place their neural bridge on hollow ground. Consider this. When a tiger cub learns to hunt, each practice session is loaded with purpose, emotion, and real-world repercussions. There are no needless repetitions. Every effort enhances not just ability, but also knowledge, awareness, and what I call emotional memory. This explains why so many practitioners get caught in mediocrity. They separate their physical practice from their emotional focus. They try to master the physical while ignoring the spiritual, emotional, and mental components of their craft. They train their bodies, but leave their souls and brains behind. All of these elements are put into the neural bridge technique that I built. It's more than merely connecting your mind and body. It's about establishing a single channel through which your full existence may express itself. When you punch, your fist should not only move through the air, your whole existence should be communicated via that one point of contact. Consider the last time you felt fully alive when pursuing your trade. That moment when time appeared to halt and everything flowed freely. That wasn't merely physical skill, it was your brain bridge at its top performance, coupling your emotional content to your bodily representation. Rhythmic Mastery. Now, I'll take you through the core of this approach, which I call Rhythmic Mastery. But remember, my buddy, that knowing is not enough. You must apply. Willing isn't enough. You must do. The secret is hidden in 3 key foundations. When they join, they generate something substantially bigger than the sum of its parts. Allow me to share with you what took me decades to realize. The first pillar is an intentional disruption. Most individuals become hostages to their routines, but actual mastery takes breaking free. I found this when creating Jeet Kune Do. One day while training, I purposely started generating errors in my forms. These were not unintended blunders, but deliberate upsets of my developed behaviors. What followed next was remarkable. My thoughts got sharper, more active. Each movement provided a fresh discovery. Consider this. When you go inside your house in full darkness, you become highly aware of every step and feeling. Your mind wakes. This enhanced degree of awareness is when genuine learning starts. This is when you go beyond technique and gain actual comprehension. The second pillar focuses on emotional integration. This extends beyond only being excited about your work. When I punch, I'm not merely making a movement, I'm expressing an emotional reality. Every action must contain what I call emotional content. During my early days in Hong Kong, I noticed that the most powerful practitioners were not generally the most technically adept. They were the ones whose motions revealed deep emotional depth. I recall coaching a professional musician. He couldn't understand a method until I told him to regard it like performing music. Music doesn't just move, I assured him. Express yourself like you do through your instrument. At that time, everything changed. His gestures went from precise technique to unfettered feeling. The third pillar is unstructured adaptability. Water, my friend, becomes a cup, a bottle, and a teapot. It takes on the form of whatever it is contained in, while keeping faithful to its core. This is how your mastery should be. This philosophy has served me well, not just in martial arts, but also in acting, writing, and other areas of my life. Let me illustrate how these pillars act together. When I first started training, I followed a normal strategy. Let us call it a basic straight punch. I would purposefully modify the beat, tempo, and angle. I would introduce distinct emotional qualities with each version via emotional integration. Sometimes aggressive, like a tiger, sometimes fluid, like as water. Through formless adaptation, I would let go of all expectations and allow my expression to assume whatever shape the time dictated. However, this strategy goes way beyond battle. I've seen artists apply it to overcome creative obstacles, businesses to innovate in stagnant industries, and musicians to build their unique voice. One of my students, a surgeon, explained how following these ideals improved his approach to challenging surgery. The psychology underlying it is both sophisticated and simple. When you purposefully disturb your habits, you compel your mind to stay in the present. When you integrate emotion, you incorporate your full self. When you adapt formlessly, you surpass the restrictions of rigid thinking. Together, these characteristics establish a situation of dynamic mastery that is always evolving. Daily practice. Let me illustrate how to implement these concepts into your normal routine. What I'm going to teach is more than simply theory. It's the technique I use to better my own talents and what I've taught my most devoted learners. First, you must know that actual practice starts long before you move a muscle. Every morning I begin with what I call the empty vessel ritual. I sit silently for 5 minutes, clearing my thoughts of any preconceived notions about my painting. This is not meditation. Rather, it is preparation for honest expression. Here's the daily framework. Start with what you know best. Take your most practiced technique, your best renowned talent, then introduce controlled chaos in 3 steps. Stage 1 entails purposefully disturbing your own rhythm. If you're a martial artist, adjust the timing of your attacks. If you are a musician, modify the speed of your most known tune. If you paint, use your non-dominant hand. The aim is not to do well, but to shake your system out of complacency. However, most practitioners fail while attempting to moderate the turbulence. Allow me to narrate a tale. I once had a learner, a wonderful calligraphy, who wrestled with this idea. His brushstrokes were flawless, yet lifeless. I pushed him to practice writing while on a boat, allowing the movement of the vessel to affect his strokes. He first rejected the unpredictability, but when he eventually embraced it, his art evolved. Controlled chaos became his ally. Stage 2 is what I refer to as emotional alchemy. Choose an emotion: anger, pleasure, calm, or fear, and let it lead your exercise. But here's the crucial thing. Don't act the sensation, become it. When I train, I do not try to be like water. I am water. This is not a metaphor, it is an actual application. The third step is known as formless integration. Most people struggle here, so listen intently. Take your damaged rhythm and emotional substance, then let go of everything technique completely. Allow your practice to be pure expression. There are no titles, forms, or styles, only honest, spontaneous movement. Allow me to tell you about the hazards. The first is ego resistance. Your mind will want to resort to what it knows and feels comfortable with. This is normal. The second is dissatisfaction with the seeming lack of progress. Remember that chaos feels like retreat to an organized intellect. Here's how you can tackle these challenges. Make what I label chaos checkpoints throughout your practice. Every 5 minutes, purposefully interrupt the rhythm you've formed. If you notice yourself becoming relaxed, that is your indication to interrupt. For quick skill gain, follow this daily plan. 5 minutes of empty vessel preparation, 10 minutes of technical practice for your pick talent, 15 minutes of rhythmic disruption, 10 minutes for emotional integration, 20 minutes of formless expressiveness. However, keep in mind one key point. The time intervals are not as critical as your overall attention to each phase. Some days you may spend hours in one phase. That is okay. What important is your honesty during practice. I'll tell you a secret I unearthed. When you believe you have mastered a phase, turn to something altogether else. If you are practicing punches, proceed to kicks. If you are currently painting landscapes, change to portraits. The idea is the same. but the circumstance differs. This removes the appearance of mastery based on familiarity. What I'm going to share with you goes way beyond physical fighting and technical proficiency. The notions we've discussed are universal rules that govern every facet of human greatness. Let me tell you about James, one of my learners in Oakland. He wasn't a combatant. He was a businessman making a key choice regarding his company's destiny. He came to me for explanation, not fighting training. I trained him to add the notion of formless adaptability into his decision-making process. Instead of adhering to traditional business rules, he learned to flow like water, altering his strategy to changing market realities. Within 6 months, his firm had doubled in size. Perhaps more astonishing was Sarah, a painter with whom I briefly trained. She was technically smart, yet she felt confined by her own knowledge. I taught her how to utilize purposeful interruption in her work. Paint like water, I instructed her. Let your emotions flow through the brush without resistance. Her painting now exhibits in exhibitions around the nation. She discovered her own voice, not by improving her technique, but by learning to convey her emotional content honestly. The most profound transformation I've noticed occurred in personal interactions. When you correctly appreciate these notions, you will recognize that every talk is a form of war, and every relationship is an explosive dance. One of my students, a problematic marital counselor, started employing the term of emotional integration in his therapy sessions. Instead of sticking to stringent therapeutic guidelines, he trained to adapt like water, moving with his clients' emotional states. His success rate has tripled. You see, your mind and body are not distinct. When you learn these concepts physically, you are also training your awareness. I've seen corporate executives adopt the empty vessel method before key discussions. Artists exploit rhythmic disturbance to overcome creative barriers. Scientists employ formless adaptation in their research methodologies. Consider this: when a CEO chooses a choice, is he or she not transmitting emotional content via business strategy? When a mother struggles with a terrible condition with her kid, does she not adapt like water to flow past obstacles? When a surgeon does a tough procedure, are they not displaying formless mastery with their tool? This is why I tell you that these principles are not techniques to be mastered, but truths to internalize. In my own path, which led me from martial arts to acting and philosophy, I learned that success in any field derives from the same source: the power to honestly express yourself while being formless, like water. A flexible mind, capable of breaking its own tendencies and integrating emotion with action, can do anything. I have seen musicians transcend their instruments. Speakers mesmerize audiences without speaking a single word. Leaders influence firms via silent example, employing the same themes we've explored. The path of mastery. Let me transport you back to that period in Hong Kong when this quest of discovery started. Standing before those masters, I realized the emptiness of superb technique without spirit. But now, my buddy, you know what I learned that day. True mastery is about honest expression, not perfection. Emotional content is more than merely feeling intensely. It is also about permitting your actual self to flow freely. That day in Hong Kong, I interrupted my lecture halfway, glanced at the masters, and did something unique. I abandoned the anticipated routine in favor of displaying my truth rather than my methods. What transpired was more than simply martial arts. It was a true revelation of the human soul. This is the ultimate secret I want to share with you. The way to mastery isn't about perfectionism. It is about being entire. When you integrate your physical ability with your emotional realities, when you allow your true self flow like water, you bridge the border between artist and art, practitioner and practice. Right now, you have everything you need to start your adventure. Do not wait for ideal circumstances. Don't wait till you feel prepared. The river does not wait for conditions to be ideal before flowing. It just flows, adapting to each route it encounters. When you return to your craft tomorrow, bear in mind that your initial activity should be led by honest sensations rather than thought. Allow your practice to reflect who you truly are, rather than what you assume you should be. Break your patterns. Embrace the chaos. Flow like water. The ultimate purpose of practice is not to reach perfection. It is to make whole. It is about uniting body, mind, and soul into a one honest presentation. Here's what I mean by emotional content. This is what I mean by being like water. My buddy, you are not just learning a process, you're becoming more conscious of your own abilities to express yourself truthfully. The power I'm discussing is not something I can give you. It's something you already have. Your role is not to produce it, but to uncover it, to enable it to flow freely, honestly, and totally. Remember, the cup is only helpful when it is empty. Empty your cup of preconception. Fill it with honest expression and allow your actual self shine through in anything you do. This is the journey of water. This is the journey to mastery. This is your road, and it starts now.